Hey guys, I'm Chris.
And I'm Mike.
And welcome back to No Limits, a mid-trap podcast. So what have you been up to this week, Mike?
Virtual school. It's happening, just we're almost a month into this whole online learning. It's kind of crazy, but we're making do. How are you?
Wow, already a month.
Yeah.
Time flies.
I know, right?
I feel like I just saw you, but it's been like 3 weeks, so.
Yeah, right.
I've been doing okay. Down to crunch time. Got 3 months left up here.
Yep.
Been getting mainly lab, a little bit of golf, at least 9 holes a week.
Oh, gee.
While I can.
That doctorate ain't going to finish itself.
No, it's not, especially not on the golf course.
Dissertations do not get written from a golf cart.
No.
Unless you're Chris Furman.
Yeah. I was trying to, but I had to come back to reality. So, but
well, couple of exciting things going on now that the release of Total Power, we're a few weeks out, and we just found out in the last few days that Kyle made second on the New York Times bestseller list. So
nice.
Congrats to him again on Total Power. It's really getting a lot of good buzz.
Why the hell is it number one? Who the hell beat him?
It looked like it was, yeah, right. I have no idea, but it looked like it was, I think, Ken Follett, who's pretty big. That Pillars book, I think Pillars of the Earth or something. But
lame. That's
yeah.
pretty lame.
And his books always look like they're like 800 pages. So are people really even reading it, or are they just buying it to put on their shelf and show off and look smart? Who knows?
Definitely the second option. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Watch them be like really amazing, and we want to start a podcast on his books, and here we are just like crapping on it.
Well, we're the Kyle Mills Mid-Trap Vince Lynn podcast, so that's what we care about. Yeah.
Sometimes we got to keep in mind we are a Mid-Trap podcast. We have so many different topics we like to spin off on. But well, speaking of Mid-Trap, we should share what's coming next, just so our readers know. I don't know about you, but I'm about halfway through Separation of Power. Because that is our book starting in October. Definitely by the first or second week of October, we will be digging into Separation of Power. So if you want to pick up your copy of that, flip through it, be our guest.
Yeah. And of course, we want to take this time to welcome a new patron. We have Joanne C. So thank you very much. We wouldn't be able to do this without your support. So yeah, thanks for joining, Joanne. Also, we have something very important to give away.
Yes.
To our patrons. A book giveaway, right?
Yes, indeed. It is just about the end of the month, so we've taken the names of any patrons who were either new or already with us in the month of September, and we put you in a little wheel that I could spin, and the winner is going to get to pick an autographed copy of 6 choices, either Executive Power, Extreme Measures, Pursuit of Honor, Act of Treason, Protect and Defend, or The Survivor. So, what do you say? Should I give it a whirl?
Yes, drum roll,
all right, here
please.
We go. Wheel of Names. I use this with my kids, by the way, in school.
I wish I could see it.
Oh, looks like I'm going back to the post office. Our winner is Peggy G.
Nice.
Yes, congrats, Peggy. I'm going to have to get the international mail ready again, knowing you're over in Germany. So we'll be reaching out to you about which book you would like us to send you, your very own autographed Vince Flynn or Kyle Mills book.
Congrats, Peggy. Thanks for being a patron.
Well, Chris, how about you tell us, what are we covering in today's Author Series podcast?
Yes, we are very excited to share with you an interview that we had with an author, S.A. Cosby, whose book came out this summer called Blacktop Wasteland. It was a great read. I highly recommend it to our listeners if you like crime, thriller, action, like a Mid-Trap book. Not quite CIA, but still very riveting. So yeah, hope you enjoy this interview.
Yes, and before we get there, though, you know what I have to do when there's a book that I really do enjoy.
You got to give us the limerick.
Not every book gets the honor of being reviewed with a double limerick on Goodreads.
Ooh, double limerick.
Blacktop Wasteland absolutely deserves that honor. So,
all right, give it to us.
I guess you could say my review of this book is best summed up in the form of a double limerick. Fighting to provide for children and wife. You could cut the racial tension with a knife. Father and son question what they've done. Was it all worth it for one last heist? S.A. Cosby cements his legacy with this tale of high-octane energy. Beauregard bug montage, the duster and his garage, read like a southern poverty melody.
Nice. It sums it up well. I like that.
There it is.
Yeah.
Proud of that one.
That's pretty good. All right. Well, we hope you enjoy this interview.
Today we welcome Shawn S.A. Cosby, author of the recently released Blacktop Wasteland, which is easily a candidate for Book of the Year, in my opinion. Shawn won an Anthony Award for Best Story back in 2019 with The Grass Beneath My Feet, and his previous titles include Brotherhood of the Blade and My Darkest Prayer. So thanks for joining us today.
Oh, man, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to start out by saying this book is amazing, and anyone who hasn't read Blacktop Wasteland should immediately go buy it on Amazon, or not Amazon, small bookstore, whatever. Get your hands on this book, because Martini literally just gave it to me. He gave me the audiobook this week, and I just consumed it. I couldn't stop listening. This book was just amazing, and I'm so excited to talk to you about it. So I'm happy you're on.
Oh man, thank you so much. I think with the audiobook, the best part of that is the guy narrating it, Adam Lazar White, is just incredible. This is my first book with a big publisher. My previous books have all been with independent publishers, and there was an interesting little tidbit about the selection process for the narration. They run the deal, they run the show, but they flat out gave me a lot of input, or allowed me to have a lot of input into a lot of what happened with the book. And one of the things they did was they gave me a chance to listen to the audition tapes from the narrators. And so I had 3 that I got to listen to. And it was almost like Goldilocks and 3 Bears. This one's too crazy. This one's too sedate. And then this one's just right. And Alan Lazar White's narration, it is the closest I've heard anyone come to how I think Bug sounds in my head. And when I first, they all read the first chapter, and he just blew me away. It just, everything from the tense and tone selection, the voices. It's funny because there's an antagonist in the book, and named Lazy, and I didn't think he was that scary or creepy. And then when I heard Mr. White's narration, it's like, oh my God, he's creepy as shit. Oh Jesus!
No, he's as creepy as Ronnie is dumb.
Yeah, you poor Ronnie. Yeah.
But let's get into that, because the amount of depth required in an audiobook, if you're going to voice the character, or even in your writing, that can get at the things that our hero, Beauregard Bug Montage, has been through, the things he's grappling with. I mean, this is marketed as a crime thriller, but if you told me this was a psychodrama of a man and his life story and overcoming, ghosts from the past and family issues that are weighing on him, you could have sold this to me as a, psychological thriller, just the things he goes through and the levels of meaning. What was it like creating a character that was this deep in dealing with both the present but also the past?
The funny thing was, when I started writing Blacktop Wasteland, so I was inspired to write Blacktop Wasteland. For anybody that doesn't know, Blacktop Wasteland is a story of Beauregard Bug Montage, former getaway driver who becomes an auto mechanic, opens his own shop. And then when we meet him in the beginning of the book, he's under a lot of financial strain. A new competitor in town is taking business away from his shop. His mother, who is terminally ill, is about to get kicked out of her nursing home because of a clerical error. He has a daughter from a previous relationship who wants to go to college but doesn't have the money. And he has 2 sons with his current wife who, need glasses and braces and all the things little kids need. And so against his better judgment, he takes on a job with a former associate, Ronnie Rock and Roll Sessions. And as things are wont to do in thrillers and heist novels, it all goes awry. So when I first started writing it, I was inspired by a movie called Hell or High Water with Chris Pine and Ben Foster. And I love that movie. I mean, it was one of the first movies that I saw as an adult that was able to articulate the pain and pathos and helplessness of being poor in America. And I wanted to write something like that, but I wanted to write it from an African-American perspective because it's different. You know, being poor is bad. Being poor and white is rough, and being poor and black in America is really rough. And so I wanted to write this story that kind of talked about that. But what happened was the character of Beauregard, he just took on, and it sounds cliche, but he really did take on this life of his own. And I ended up wanting to kind of talk about things, you know, about masculinity, both tragic and toxic, and how we look at the past with rose-colored glasses sometimes, that we look at our past and our past choices through the sheen of nostalgia, and how that sort of immaturity doesn't allow us to move forward in life, and how, you know, you keep making the same mistakes, but for new reasons. And so I kind of wanted to talk about that. And so I did that with Beauregard, but I also wanted to, you know, to make the book exciting. So there's car chases and people get hit in the face with wrenches. So, the main thing with Beauregard, I didn't want him to be a stock character. You know, I wanted to take certain tropes of that style. Like I wanted to take the taciturn attitude of somebody like Parker from the Richard Stark novels, but I wanted to kind of extrapolate that character and see, you know, I wanted, for lack of a better word, a friend of mine named Tommy Pluck, he says it's Parker with a home life, and that's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to see this man who's capable of incredible acts of violence and daring do, but also what's he like with his kids, with his wife, with his friends. So I kind of wanted to bring those things together, and by the end of the book, by the end of the first draft, it was way different than what I thought it was going to be. But I'm so glad that people are responding to it the way they are.
Definitely. You said that, you know, he's not this stock character. I really think you build upon, you know, this sort of standard heist getaway driver. And a lot of times we often the getaway driver is not like the main, you know, person of, you know, these heist novels. So it was kind of cool to see the aspect of them, but then also like we don't normally see in a lot of these movies or books, you know, their life. I really enjoyed seeing that. And so you're from Virginia. I'm also from Virginia. I grew up in Fredericksburg.
2 up, 2 down.
Yes, I grew up in Fredericksburg, and so my uncle owns a towing business, and like just understanding, you know, you were able to capture and describe so vividly, you know, like just like everything that goes on in like these sort of rural communities. You know, I grew up seeing this kind of stuff. Obviously, you know, not from the same perspective, but I could appreciate and further understand how we live in this time now. I mean, this novel couldn't have been dropped, you know, at a better time. And I wanted to ask if you could speak on that. You know, if that was, obviously it took you a while to write this, but was it intentional to address some of those topics?
I think the thing about it, somebody asked me that question before, and it's like, do you feel like this is a timely book? And I said, unfortunately, yeah, because the things that I'm talking about in Blacktop Wasteland are cyclical. Right. You know, I wrote Blacktop Wasteland in 2016, but the things that I was talking about are still prevalent in 2020, and they were prevalent in 2005. And so, you know, the funny thing about, and you might can attest to this, having grown up in Fredericksburg, the funny thing about growing up in the South or in a rural environment is a lot of times you have more in common with your white neighbor down the road, or your black neighbor down the road, or the Hispanic neighbor down the road in a rural environment than you would have with somebody from New York or Philly or Chicago. Yeah. There's this camaraderie of poverty to a certain extent. And a lot of people, especially where I'm from, some folks don't want to see that, you know, and like, if I go down the street, I live in a small town, I live in the smallest town in Virginia. It's called Matthews, Virginia. We got 8,000 people. Wow. It's the smallest county in the state. If I go down the street to the local restaurant and I see a friend of mine from high school, we can immediately, whether he's white or black, we can immediately start talking about, field parties and getting somebody to buy us Mad Dog 2020 and going crabbing or going fishing or going swimming off the creek. And so that kind of shared mental connectivity is something that makes a rural setting unique. You know, it's a rural setting is this weird tapestry that is, we're all interconnected in small towns. You know, you're divided by race and you're divided by class, but underneath that, subtextually, you're connected because you're not more than 6 degrees separation from everybody else in town. So I'm connected to the county sheriff because I went to school with his wife's sister, and his wife's sister and I were in algebra together, and so that connectivity kind of holds it together. But again, you're still fighting the things, unfortunately, that do separate us. And so when I was writing Blacktop Wasteland, I wanted to talk about that sort of small town setting where everybody knows everybody, where you can walk in a bar and you can see a guy that, maybe, y'all got into a scrap in high school 10 years ago, or maybe you see a guy that just got out of prison, he killed his wife, and his wife was your wife's cousin. And so that sort of small town mentality forces you sometimes to deal with things or compartmentalize things in a way that maybe you don't have to do if you live in New York. If you live in Brooklyn and you got into a skirmish with somebody, you can go to Manhattan and never see that person again for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. And still be in the same state, in the same city. And so it's different in small towns. And so that kind of blue collar, working class environment that exists, regardless of your ethnic background, is something I don't see a lot of in modern fiction, represented in a way that's, to me, respectful, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I love hearing your description of that because I wanted to ask you about painting these settings with your words. The place is so powerful in your books, as you just explored on a human level, and that comes through in your writing. Some of the similes and the different comparisons of how you describe Southern Virginia, one, I could tell you just have a love and a passion for it as the writer, but it also makes the story pop. It's almost like reading your books was seeing the most vivid colors I could on a canvas. And we're talking about what I think, if you want to say your average Americans might write off as a rural backwater or, hours outside of a major city. I'd rather read a book that takes place, like you mentioned, Philly, Chicago, New York. But your writing elevates these landscapes. Can you talk about how important it was to describe the settings of a place you so obviously love and the characters in this story are tied to?
Yeah, I think with Blacktop Wasteland, which is, it's funny because I'm working on something right now that's set in the same location, but it's not as atmospherically dependent as Blacktop. And I think the reason is, one, Blacktop is a singular story about one character and how he is navigating his life in this small town. But two, like you said, I love being from the South. I love being a country boy. I love being from Virginia, and I love the background, but I'm also fully cognizant and aware of the grotesqueness that exists in the South, the history that goes along with the bloody, history. There's an idea among some people that the South is the sole provenance of neo-Confederate and racist apologists, and I'll be damned if that's true. I will not concede 1 inch of my home to anybody that feels that way. My family goes back 6 generations in Virginia. My grandfathers and grandmothers and ancestors bled and died in this land. And so it's just as much mine as it's yours. And so because I love the South, I have a duty to celebrate and criticize her at the same time. And so when I talk about, rolling fields of dry corn stalks, or when I talk about, desiccated buildings that have been abandoned, how industry has pulled up stakes and left town on the first thing smoking, it's not just to make people feel sorry for us, but to make people feel what is lost in these towns. I grew up, when I was a kid, we had like an ice factory and there was a flag factory. And if you didn't work on the water, everybody worked in these factories and everybody was making money. And, it was nothing for somebody to go to a car dealership with $8,000 in a paper bag and buy a car. No debt, just let's leave. I want to make one payment, as my dad used to say. And so I love that. But I also know that way of life, unfortunately, has moved on to a certain extent. And so when I talk about place and setting, it is from a sense of melancholy and loss, but also a sense of responsibility. I think for me personally, I like to write. I use a lot of sensory dependent phrases and stuff. I like to use sight and sound and smell and tactile sensation to put people in the story. And like anybody, you can go overboard with that. My poor editor, there's a lot of metaphors and similes that are on this cutting room floor, and rightly so. But I do really, that's, for lack of a better word, that's my style. I like that. I like the sensation of the heat making you sweat and how it feels, the leather seat against your back, how the steering wheel feels in your hand, or just sitting on your front porch, listen to like katydids and crickets and stuff like that. And so those are the things that not only put the reader in the story, in a sensory, auditory or way, but also it just, like you said, it allows me to talk about and share with people a place that I really, really love.
Yeah, to follow up on that, you obviously have a great appreciation for cars, and I wanted to know if you could comment on that, especially like this, the main car, the Duster. Where did you come up with this car, the Duster?
Okay, so I grew up in a family. I grew up pretty poor, and so we were shade tree mechanics by necessity. We couldn't afford to go to a mechanic, and so we learned to work on our own stuff. And I had a cousin. He's no longer with us, but I had a cousin who was, I call him, he was kind of the inspiration for Bug. He was a Mozart of motors, never went to technical school, never, took any professional courses on how to work on cars. Just, some people can sing, some people can dance, he can work on cars. And so when I was a kid, I would sneak out of my house. I was like 12 or 13. I had no business being at the house, but I sneak out of the house and go with him, and we go on the other side of town, over to Route 17, and we would go drag racing. And the scene that's in the first chapter of the book is based on a lot of scenes that I saw growing up. A lot of guys would come with their after model, late model cars, and and it was you were there to race, but it was also sort of a hangout spot. I don't put it in the first chapter of the book, but a lot of times, as a young 12, 13-year-old kid, there'd be women there, sometimes girls there, sometimes. So you got everything that makes an American male's heart beat fast. You got fast cars, you got beautiful women, you got a summer night, when the moon is just right. And so those experiences really had a impact on me. And so I grew up with a love of automobiles and a love of, especially the American muscle car. I think the American muscle car, there's no better representation of what I consider the best of like the American heyday, the American ideal. You got the car, the Mustang, and you got the horse, the Mustang, and I think those two are tied together. And there's a sense of freedom when you're behind the wheel of a car. There's a sense of you can literally jump in this car and go anywhere. And when you grow up, kind of poor and or a small town in rough circumstances, that dream sometimes is enough to keep you going. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna get me a car one day, and I'm gonna drive across country. I'm going to end up in California or Arizona or wherever. I'm going to go anywhere but here. I'm going to get out of here. And so that always stayed with me. And so when I talk about the scene where Bug's reminiscing with his dad, how his dad takes off and the car is so strong, it presses him back in the seat and he can't touch the dashboard. That's based on a real life thing that happened with me and my cousin. My cousin used to have this Vega, and during one of his races, I asked him, could I ride with him? And he's like, yeah. He didn't have seatbelts either. He's like, we ain't gonna need seatbelts. If we crash, we're gonna die. I was like, oh, okay. And I remember being in the car, and I remember we were flying. We were doing like 105, 110. And I looked over at him. He's, you scared? And I was like, yeah, a little. And he said, well, don't you get scared till I get scared. I was like, too late. I'm already terrified. But that experience, it always stayed with me, and I always wanted to write something about it. I always wanted to kind of put it on the page, and just use it as a sort of a tribute to not only my cousins but all those folks I grew up with. And that kind of, there's a huge subculture in rural America of cars and fast cars and drag racing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to express that on the page.
Yep. So I got to ask you, and call me crazy, but I think the Duster is a character in the story. And the way you wrote this car that is so much more than an object, in Bug's life, but also it clearly stands out and plays a role in the plot and helps advance the plot in so many ways, while at the same time, an off-screen character, Beauregard's father, plays such a role, but we never see him.
Right.
And so is there some sort of interplay between the Duster being in the background? It's almost reverentially part of every scene. Even when it's not there, there's this aura of the Duster. So we never meet Beauregard's father, but we always have the Duster with us. I see it as a character. Is that something you were going for, that interplay?
It's a symbol. I wanted to be a metaphor for Bug. If you want to ask me, that's the one metaphor I did put in the book intentionally. A lot of other stuff just had my accent, but I really wanted the duster to be a metaphor for Bug and his place in life right now, where he's holding on to the past, and it's not healthy. He knows it's not healthy. He's aware that it's damaging to him. And, and his wife, who's the Greek chorus in the book, who tells him, sell the duster. You don't have to rob this jewelry store if you sell the duster. And, we know a lot of people laugh about it because, if you listen, like somebody said, if you listen to his wife, the book's only 7 pages long. But but at the same time, he can't, because he's not in a place mentally where he can let go of that duster. There's this line that he says, the duster is his dad's. It's a tombstone to a ghost without a grave. And it's that, and it's more than that. It's a connection to the kid that he used to be before certain things in the plot happen, and the man that he's become. And it's how he's able to just function day to day. I think he thinks without the duster, he wouldn't be able to make it. He would give in to his worst impulses. The duster is there as a symbol of when, the last time he was happy with his dad, the last time things were really normal in his life. And so it becomes this kind of mythological thing throughout the book. It's this heirloom, but it's also kind of this cursed heirloom in a way. And there's something that happens toward the end of the book when he's finally able to let go of the past, and he's finally able to move on and deal with reality on his own terms, not under the shadow of his father, not under this kind of shadow or this false facade of tough guy masculinity, but really dealing with it as a person. And my dad, he didn't have a duster, but he had a Chevelle, black Chevelle with a white racing stripe.
Nice.
And when him and my mom separated, he took the Chevelle with him. And I always wanted to get a car like that. And I knew deep down inside that was kind of my way of trying to be close to my dad, to create and hold on to that connection. And I think a lot of guys, I think if you're a young man of a certain age and your parents separated and maybe you don't have the best relationship with your father, things like cars and guns, vehicles, objects like that are symbols of this shared masculinity that's supposed to be passed down to you. And it's sometimes the only way you can hold. I have a friend who has a knife that belonged to his dad, and his mom and dad separated, and his dad died, and he never really knew him. And, you hold on to these totems of not just masculinity, but of emotion and these totems of what makes us who we are. And so for Bug, he loves that car because he loved his dad. He wouldn't love the car as much as he did if he didn't love his dad as much as he did. But he has a hard time dealing with who his dad really was, and he has a hard time accepting that his father's on this pedestal that he put him on, and I think there's a moment for all of us as kids when we realize our parents aren't perfect.
Right.
There's this moment where you realize, my dad can't beat everybody's dad on the block, and my mom's sweet potato pie isn't maybe the best. And I think the maturity, the thing that helps us as adults when we can be mature is to say, yeah, but that's okay. He's still my dad. Or yeah, mom's pie is not that great, but she's our mom and we love her. And I think there's a moment where people realize that, and some people like Bug aren't able to deal with that moment. And so the duster is kind of a symbol of this emotional immaturity, but at the same time, it's also a symbol of this. He just desperately wants this connection. He's still inside this little boy that wants his dad. And so the duster becomes a symbol of that. And then when he's finally able at the end of the book to let go of certain things, I think it will make him a better person.
Right. Also, another big part of this book is obviously the secondary characters, your filling cast. And I just wanted to know, some of these characters are really well written and they just provide a, nice contextual basis for the rest of the book, especially like Kelvin, or I love Uncle Booney.
Uncle Booney.
And then, Ronnie Sessions, he's a character. I love his Elvis tattoos. That was pretty funny. I was laughing out loud listening to that description.
Do you know a guy? Do you know a guy with the Elvis tattoos?
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
I got to know.
So I won't say who it is,
okay,
but I do know a person. They don't have, now here's the funny thing. They don't have Elvis tattoos. They have a bunch of, I don't know if you're familiar with the rap group, but there's a rap group called Wu-Tang Clan.
Yes.
And I have a friend who has a ton of Wu-Tang Clan tattoos. And we were young listening to it and stuff. I said, blank person, you may not like them when you get older. Are you sure you want to get a full sleeve? And he was like, Wu-Tang forever, man. And I was like, Killer Bees. And I'm like, all right. So now in our 40s, whenever I see him, I do nudge him a little bit. I said, you still want that tattoo? And he's like, I'm trying to get it covered. I'm trying to get it. And not that he hates Wu-Tang. It's just, you're 46 years old now and you work in an accounting firm.
Right.
So it's like, you can never go to a picnic with your sleeve rolled up. But I took that idea and gave it to Ronnie because Ronnie's like that. And Ronnie's somebody who never matures, never grows. Ronnie in many ways is the yin to Bug's yang. Yeah. He's Bug if Bug was stupid. It's like come from the same background. And Ronnie's white and Bug is black. They come from the same small town, broken homes, broken men that are trying to do the best they can. And so Ronnie is sort of what Bug would be without Bug's skills. And, it's funny. Ronnie's such a piece of shit, but he's charming in spite of himself, and funny. And he's dumb, but he's dumb, but he's cunning. And I think that's the thing that I think makes him an interesting character. He's not as smart as Bug, but he damn sure is cunning. And he's a snake. Don't make no mistake about that. And like Reggie's dumb too, but Reggie's sort of a sweetheart. He loves his brother, so he's just gonna go along with whatever Ronnie says. And Kelvin is as close to that Bug has to having a brother, and he's he's that friend. That I think every guy has that friend that. There's a scene in the movie The Town with Ben Affleck, and he comes in and Jeremy Renner's sitting on the couch, and he's like, I need you to go with me. We're gonna hurt some people, and I can never ask you. Can you never ask me about it again? And Jeremy Renner's like, well, who car are we taking? And I think we all like to think that we have a friend like that that's got your back no matter what, will help you move or help you move a body. And I think that's an important part of healthy relationships. Not saying you need to move a body, but you need to have that. And so Kelvin was kind of my example of that for Bug. And I wanted all of those guys and that character like Jenny, who's just in a couple scenes, but I wanted to give them all agency. Right. I didn't want them to be cannon fodder. I wanted them to have their own hopes and dreams and desires and faults and foibles and fears. And it just it just came together in a way that I don't know. I don't know. It shocked me because a lot of those characters, the way they end up in the book is not the way I originally planned for them to end up. And so I kind of surprised myself a couple of times. And, even characters like Bug's mom, people, she's a firecracker, but he still loves her, because that's his mom. Just like he still loves his dad. I think that's relatable to a lot of people.
Yes. Yep. Even these supporting characters that play a minor role in terms of the time on the page, there's no way they're a minor role in creating this fabric of the story, in creating the universe.
Oh man, thank you.
Everyone just plays a role, executes it, and they're written exactly how you would expect real life to happen. And makes it real. Well,
thank you so much.
Yeah. Before we ask you a little bit more about your writing career in general and some other things, what's next for Bug? I mean, I'm praying I get to see him again and get to learn more about him.
I have an idea. So when I wrote Blacktop Wasteland, the first draft ended very differently than what is in bookstores right now. And my agent, he said, I really like this character. I think you could do more with him. And at first I was very, I don't know. But now I'd like to catch up with him maybe 10 years down the road when Javon and Darren are older and see what happened to him. Did him and Kia work it out? How's his relationship with Javon and Darren and his son and his daughter Ariel? How was his life after the events? There's a lot of terrible things. Poor Bug. There's a lot of terrible things that happen in Blacktop Wasteland. And so I wonder he will be handling those things. And I wonder if his intended purpose to break this chain from his dad to him to his boys, did it work? And how are they? Where are they at in their lives? And because it's Bug, is something going to happen where he's going to have to get behind the wheel of a car again? And you know, I sort of have an idea. I'm playing around with this idea of maybe Javon trying to become a legit like NHRA driver or like National Hot Rod Association driver, and maybe running afoul of some people and having to go to his dad, but not wanting to go to his dad because they don't have the greatest relationship. You know, and maybe instead of like Bug leaving, Mayor Kia and the boys left. Maybe he stayed in Red Hill and they moved away. And how does that work? And does, you know, is he able to have some kind of connection with them, even though Javon hates him and Darren has him on like a pedestal? So, and how will that work out? And how is he dealing with the fallout of everything? So there's definitely I put like this, there's definitely some scribbles that have been put down future for Bug and the rest of the Montage clan and where they end up and how things would be in the future. So definitely something on the horizon, I think, for him and the rest of the game.
That is the exact answer I was hoping to hear.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because I listened to it via audiobook, but I think this would be a great movie or, you know, miniseries or something. I just could.
Well, we did sell the option rights earlier this year.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
A company called Picture Start. So the guy who used to run Liongate has bought the option. So maybe things get a little better. We'll see. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it, man. And you know what's funny? I would love to see it not just because I wrote it. I just think it would be cool. I think it would be a cool movie. You know, it's like
it's a killer story. Yeah.
Since you guys have both read the book, you'll know what I'm referencing. But that last car chase, I would love to see somebody who knows how to do stunt work do that car chase. So
to watch, to read that on the page blew my mind. To see it on film, oh man, I don't know what I'd do. That was something. That was really something. Wow.
So I'd be sitting there just like everybody else, like, oh my God, this is
I'm not going to sleep tonight now thinking about casting. Now I'm going to be up all night trying to go through my head with some fan casting, trying to figure out who I'd want to see play that role. My God. Oh, the Duster. Can you imagine seeing the Duster on film? I'd go to an IMAX for that.
Oh man. I can see an opening tracking shot of the first chapter. And you hear Warren Crocker talking a lot of shit, and you have this tracking shot across the ground, and it comes up to the Duster, and it slowly rises up the Duster until you rise up and you see this guy's feet, and then you see this guy, and then you see the face, and it's just Bug leaning against the Duster with his arms crossed. So it's like, So
shit,
I
then
write
the tension.
Yeah, exactly. You hear this guy just running his mouth, and then you see this dude, this very stoic dude, and you know in a scene like that, they're gonna have a conflict. It's just the way the narrative has to go. So, like I said, I write cinematically, so I kind of think about stuff like that. So,
and then hearing the sirens go off and the badges come up, like the tension in that scene would be insane.
Oh yeah!
Wow.
Well, we were wondering if you could share a little bit more about you as Shawn the writer, Shawn the person. Tell us about your journey, how you got here, how you began to write.
So I grew up, like I said, really poor in Matthews, and I started reading. My mom likes to tell people I started reading when I was 4. I don't know how true that is. I think that's a myth, but I remember reading really early, and she's like, oh, he was reading and talking and solving for X when he was 4. But but I remember reading like actual like comic books and stuff when I was 5 or 6. I remember I could read before I went to school, and I loved reading. And I grew up in a household, really poor. My grandma was a big reader. She loved Harlequin romances. And so those were my first books that I read were Harlequin. I would just take her Harlequin romance. Didn't understand half of what was going on, but it was like, oh, this is pretty cool. It's a pirate, and he's in love with this lady who's not a pirate. And and so what happened was when I started getting a little older, of course, I discovered libraries and stuff like that. And but the thing that really had a big influence on me as a reader and a writer was we used to go to this thrift store, and in this thrift store there was a bin, like a big basket, and you could get 5 paperbacks for $1. And so, it was just a grab bag. You didn't know what you're going to get. So I was just going in and grab books. So I started reading everything from Agatha Christie to, like I said, Robert Ludlum and Eric Ambler and, Arthur Conan Doyle and Donald Goins and Chester Himes and Raymond Chandler and biographies of like Peter the Great and Alexander the Great and stuff like that. So you get that grab bag of books and I just read through them. And so what happened was, when I was in the 9th grade, my English teacher, I wrote we had to write a reimagining of a classic. We had to write the ending, like a 2,000-word essay. And I wrote this really gory reimagining of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And my English teacher hated it. She hated it. She said, oh, this is just awful. And she just kept on going on this tirade about how awful it was. But then at the end, she's like, but you do have a talent for writing. I just wish you'd write something else. And so I was like, oh, wow, okay. And I met another English teacher in 11th grade named Mr. Jeff Bone, who really inspired me to like take it seriously, like to really get serious about writing. So what happened was I got out of high school, went to college, had to drop out of college. My mom got really ill, so I had to come out of college to help her. And then after that, I kind of bounced around for a while, did a lot of different things, but I always kept writing. I was a bouncer. I was a construction worker. I was a retail manager for a number of years. I was a mascot for a fast food place. I did a lot of different stuff, but I just kept writing. And around 2010, 2009, I said, okay, I'm gonna get really serious about writing. I took a creative writing course online and just really focused on trying to write something strong to publish. And nobody wanted it. So anyway, what ended up happening was I had a friend, and this is a true story, I swear to God. I had a friend who's a belly dancer, right? So he goes to New York to do a show. She leaves Virginia, goes to New York, does the show. When she's in New York, she meets a guy named Todd Robinson. Todd Robinson used to publish a magazine called Thug Lit. It was a crime magazine. She comes home and tells me, hey, I met this guy. You should contact him. He posted a magazine and he's looking for stories. And I said, well, I don't really write, because at the time I wasn't really writing crime. I was trying to write horror stories. And she's like, well, he pays $100 or whatever. I'm like, oh, I'll write a crime story. And
could do that.
Yeah, I wrote one, had no inclination that it would ever get published. I was like, worth a shot. Sent it to him. He published it, and it's called The Rat and the Cobra. And that was my first published crime story. And then it just clicked. I said, maybe crime is my genre. Maybe it's not these other things I'm trying to do. So then fast forward a few years, published a bunch of different short stories in different magazines and anthologies and stuff. And I wrote a mystery novel called My Darkest Prayer, set in small town Virginia, about a former deputy named a guy of mixed race heritage, wife, his dad's white, his mom's black. I wrote that, and it got published by a company called Intrigue Publishing out of Maryland. And it did all right. People seemed to respond to it pretty well. And so when that book was coming out, I saved up all my money, and I went to a convention called BoucherCon, this big mystery convention. And it was in Florida in 2018. And I went to Florida, and I was trying to promote My Darkest Prayer. But while I was down there, I was lucky enough to be asked to sit on a panel. And I'm a nobody writer. I mean, I've written some short stories, but I didn't have any books out. But my friend, Eric Pruitt, who's a great Southern writer and filmmaker, he got me on a panel. And I was on this panel with Ace Atkins and Stephanie Post and Alex Segura and Eric and me. And after the panel, I got to tell you guys this. So this panel was about Southern crime fiction, right? And we're talking about race and poverty and class and everything that in history, everything that makes Southern fiction great. And at the end of the panel, this lady stands up and she's like, well, I don't have a question. I have a comment. I'm like, here we go. All right. And so she said that, basically she said, I know that the antebellum period was bad for some people, but I miss that antiquated, beautiful etiquette and manners and so nobody said nothing. You could hear a pin drop. Oh, and Eric was like, Shawn, would you like to take it? I was like, I would love to take it. So
game time.
I told the lady, I was like, hey, I understand what you're saying, but I don't know if it was bad for some people as opposed to being horrific for some people. And then she said, well, I just feel like we're getting pushed aside as white people. I'm like, oh, you'll be all right. I'm going to help you. I'm going to teach you how to drive while black and shop while black. I'm going to show you how to get through this. We'll work through this together. And everybody laughed and took the tension out of the room. And a guy came up to me after the panel and he said, hey, my name is Josh Gessler and I'm an agent. And I really liked what you said on the panel. Do you have anything you're working on? At the time, I had Blacktop Wasteland in the can. I said, well, I just finished this Southern Heist novel. He said, well, look, when you get home, send it to me. And I didn't send it to him for 2 months because I really didn't think he was being serious. And I finally sent it to him. That was in November of 2018. He signed me in December of 2018. We sold the book to Flatiron for a 2-book deal in 2019. And that's how Blacktop Wasteland came to be.
Nice.
That's one heck of a story. I'm
glad you were on that panel. Yeah.
So my smart ass mouth was what got me a book deal.
Yeah.
It's like Bug. Being honest is going to get you somewhere, though. It's going to get you through.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, your story makes me think. I'm a teacher in DC public schools, and I mean, just what your book itself, but also your story as a writer, I feel like could mean so much to different high school English programs and different writing groups out there that we have. It'd be amazing for your story to be out there for the youth.
I owe a lot to, and I still call him Mr. Bone, even though now like we're both old and we've had dinner together before, so it's like he's not Mr. Bone, but Jeff Bone, my English teacher in 11th grade, I owe a lot to him because people don't realize, and props to you, because people don't realize how important teachers are to just. Sometimes I was lucky. I had a good support at home. My mom was always, if you want to be a writer, I'll support you 100%. But not everybody has that. There are a lot of people that come from backgrounds where, if you can't feel it, touch it, or smell it, they don't think it's a valuable skill. And so a lot of times people come from homes where writing is looked down upon with disdain. And so a lot of great writers never get a chance because their mom or their dad or their uncle or their grandfather, you and your fancy book reading. And so teachers are the fanners of that flame, they keep that hope alive in a lot of kids. And so I tell anybody, if it wasn't for people like Mr. Bone who supported me, and I don't know if I would be doing this because he just really believed in me, and it's something when a person that you respect believes in you. Even if you don't ever succeed at what you choose to do, at least you tried. And that it means a lot. It really does. So
that's great to hear. And between that and you just not giving up writing, you just kept writing through the other day jobs. You always wrote, and then you came out on top and got the break. So that's inspiring.
It's funny though, because it's weird because writing was the one thing that always gave me solace. No matter whether I was going through I had a bunch of bad relationships. If I was going through bad relationships or bad jobs or in a really rough spot, it was a time where I was working 2 jobs trying to keep my piece of crap car going. And, I'd come home and I used to have this old, I'm telling you how old I am. I used to have this old word processor that was like a typewriter, but you could plug it into a monitor and it could also be a monitor. And I remember writing on that and just, whenever I wrote, no matter what was going on, I always felt at peace. And so it was one of the things I don't think I knew how not to do it. I had to do it. I had to write. And I'm not saying that you have to feel like that to be a writer, but I think it helps. I think it helps a lot because I don't like to say this a lot because it sounds egotistical, but writing is the one thing in my entire 46 years on this earth that I feel like I'm really good at. And that's not because of the book deal. That's not because of the award. It's just, I just feel it. It's the thing that's most natural to me. It just comes out. And I think you've got to try to follow that dream no matter where it goes. You have to. You always, don't leave with regrets. Don't leave this planet with regrets. And that's one of the things. I mean, I tell anybody, people always ask me now, what do I do? I want to be a writer. And I'm like, just keep writing. Keep writing.
That's awesome. That's great advice. Right. I love hearing that.
Yeah.
Don't stop writing. We like your books. So we don't want to take up too much more.
I'm working on a new one right now. So
good.
I'll give you a real quick elevator pitch on that one. So this one, it takes place in the same area. So I'm trying to create a S.A. Cosby shared universe. So it takes place in the same area, but this one is about 2 fathers, one black, one white, both ex-cons, whose gay sons were married and they were murdered a little while after they got married. And so these 2 men decide to investigate the crime because they feel like the police are dragging their feet, and B, they want to redeem themselves because neither one of them accepted their son's sexuality growing up. And so they want to redeem themselves for the poor job they did raising their children, at the same time find revenge for their kids. So you have these 2 sort of alpha male, tough guys kind of immersing themselves in their children's world to find the people that did it and exact their bloody vengeance. So it's like I told somebody it's Rolling Thunder meets the Defiant One. So
there we go.
Know Rolling Thunder is a great movie from William Devane and Tommy Lee Jones. Somebody gets their hand cut off in the trash compactor. Go check it out. It's a great movie. But
Can we put a pre-order in now for that? A pre-publication or a pre-written order? I'd do that.
I'm in the midst of revising and revisions right now. So, and it's funny because whenever you write, so I don't know about anybody else, but whenever I write, there's a moment where you come up with the idea where you're like, huh, that's a pretty good idea. It's all right. Then you start writing, it's like, oh man, it's pretty good. And then halfway through, you're like, oh, this is shit. What am I doing? What are words? Just throw the goddamn computer out the window. And then if you're lucky, you get through that and you realize at the end of it, it's like, sorry. Not bad. I did the best I could with what I had, and so hopefully, hopefully people will like it the same way they like Blacktop Wasteland. So.
Are you a plotter or are you a pantser? Do you do long outlines or just sit down and write the whole thing?
I can't do the pantsing thing. I'm a hybrid. You know what? Really, my style, what I do is I come with an idea and I write a 3-page or 4-page synopsis. And I basically tell myself the story, but without any dialogue, just the narrative. Just this is what this person, this is who this guy is, or this gal is, and this is what they did, and then they went this place, and they went that place. And once I can get that synopsis down, I can write the book. It doesn't have to follow the synopsis word for word or beat for beat. The synopsis is just a roadmap, but it kind of gives me an idea about where I want to go. And from there, I can go on any tangent I want. I envy anybody who can just sit down and pants it out, man. I can't. That's too scary for me. But then I'm also too lazy to do a whole lot of outlining. So the synopsis kind of works in the middle for me. I'm terribly lazy. It's like, I'm not doing all that. I have friends who have like big whiteboards and they're writing like all types of addendums and they're grabbing sentences, and I'm not doing all that. So I just want to tell the story, man. I just want to get into it.
Nice happy medium. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we want to respect your time, so we have a few personal questions here to ask you.
Okay.
Feel free to rapid fire, give us something.
All right.
But I heard somewhere you're an avid hiker. Favorite trails in the Mid-Atlantic area?
Favorite trail, I have 2 favorite trails. One is the Beaver Dam Trail in Gloucester, my hometown, and then one is the Lake Anna State Park Natural Trail.
I like that one.
But yeah. You can go up there and there's old mines, and it's creepy as shit. But I like it. So those are my 2 favorite trails I hike.
Okay.
Nice.
All right. So you mentioned you like cars. Give me your takes on the Tesla. How you feel about the Tesla?
Is that a dicey one?
I want to hate the Tesla because it feels like when you're in one, like, are we in a car? Are we driving? Are we floating? Is this like are we riding on magnets? It doesn't give me the visceral. It doesn't feel like a 71 Impala. It doesn't feel like, like a 68 Chevelle. It just doesn't. Even when you take off, it's like, I need that roar. I need those trumpets, man. And I mean, I admire the fuel economy, but it ain't boss, man. It's like I'm not getting a Tesla. So
yeah, they need to get a electric car that has that sound. I think that was in a movie with like Kevin James or something like that. But anyways.
Give me an electric car with duals and we can maybe talk.
There you go.
Speaking about cars, I got one for you. What comes to mind as the best song about cars, or even about the freedom that cars?
Oh man. I guess I give you 3. Chuck Berry's "No Particular Place to Go." Let me see. It's not really a car song, but I take that back. Chuck Berry's "No Particular Place to Go." Bruce Springsteen's Jungle Land. Bruce Springsteen, Jungle Land.
There it is, Jungle Land.
And Tom Petty's Running Down the Dream. I like those. Running Down the Dream always makes me want to just jump in the car and just drive with the windows down and just see where we end up. And I think that's the best thing about a car song. So
nice.
All right. So poetry or nonfiction?
I like reading nonfiction. But I like writing poetry, so I don't know. I think I like nonfiction books. I read a lot of serial killer stuff. So
okay, true crime.
A lot of true crime. Maybe more than I should.
All right, well, not a big nonfiction fan, but if you had to, you got an offer you couldn't refuse. What's one topic you would want to write a nonfiction book about?
Oh, I got you. It goes back to my previous one. I love to do a true crime novel. There was a series of murders here in the Taiwan area, the Colonial Parkway murders. And I would love to write a true crime book about that. Just investigate that. Either that or, no, I'll tell you another one. I would love to write a nonfiction book about Wendell Scott. He was the first black NASCAR driver back when NASCAR first started. And he's from Danville, Virginia. And I'd love to write maybe even not a book, an article about him because he's such a fascinating guy. He really was. Really incredible dude. So yeah, those are my two answers to that.
I'd pre-order that one too.
All right. We like to end this podcast by asking, what our interviewee has either the latest thing they've consumed, either TV or in fiction, or what are you consuming during these trying times?
I'll give you. Okay, so I just watched the movie version of The Devil All the Time. It's a Donald Ray Pollock book. They made it in a movie with Tom Holland and Robert Pattinson. I love the movie. It was really good.
It was good. I was going to watch it this weekend.
I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I've just finished reading When These Mountains Burn by David Joy. Really good Southern noir, Appalachia sort of rural noir book. That was really good. And I am currently listening to an album by a group called the Black Pumas. It's sort of Southern bluesy R&B rock. It was one of somebody sent me the link from Spotify, and I just really loved it. So that's really good. And I'd like to give a real quick shout out. Anybody that's listening or watch or listen to the podcast, 3 writers and 3 books you should read. Kelly J. Ford wrote a book called Cottonmouth. It's about takes place in Arkansas. It's a rural noir, takes place in Arkansas with a female lead. It's a really great book. Interesting character. It's so goddamn Southern you can smell the chicken shit from the page. I love that book. Kelly Garrett wrote a really good book. And I know most people that listen to the podcast may not be into cozies and stuff, but she wrote a really funny, awesome mystery novel that takes place in LA called Hollywood Homicide. So it's a change of pace, a palate cleanser. You might want to check that out. I love that. And my friend Eric Pruitt, as I spoke about him previously, he has a really great book. It's been out a few years. Was nominated for an Anthony called What We Reckon. It's like if Jim Thompson, who wrote like The Killer Inside Me, if he had a sense of humor, he would have written What We Reckon. It's a really good book. So those are my 3 recommendations too. So
okay. Can our listeners find you on social media, Instagram?
You can find me on Instagram at LeoKing73. You can follow my brain droppings on Twitter at Black Lion King 73, and my author's page on Facebook is S.A. Cosby author. Then I love hearing from people. I try to respond to as many messages as I can. Although I will say I got a really cool shout out the other night from, can't believe it, but I got a shout out from Stephen King, and he said he had read Blacktop Wasteland. Yeah, and he liked it, and blew my effing mind. I literally felt like my brain was melting. So I've gotten a lot of interesting DMs since then. So
wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's good
that was
stuff.
Crazy, man.
Well, thank you, Shawn, for joining us. I've been smiling for the last hour or so, talking with you. This is definitely the highlight of my week. So anybody listening, go out and buy the book right away. Blacktop Wasteland. Audiobook was awesome, and you can't miss this one. Definitely a candidate for the book of the year, in my opinion. So thanks for joining us today, Shawn. This was a blast.
Man, thank you guys for having me so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
It was really nice talking to Shawn. We hope that you enjoyed listening and hope you can catch his book. Next time, we're going to be doing our first part of Separation of Power. Again, Martini said it at the top, but our reading list is going to be Separation of Power for October, Executive Power for November, and then Memorial Day to finish off the year in December.
Yeah, so plan ahead, and if you want to read any of those books to follow along a little better with the podcast, we'd be happy to have you continue listening and following along.
As always, we got to shout out our patrons. That include our special operator, Sherry F., and our special agents, we have Matt, Roman, Dawn, Dennis, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, and Jeff. Thanks to you guys. We couldn't do it without you.
Don't forget to please subscribe, rate, and review us using your favorite podcasting platform. You can find us online at mitchrappod.com or using the Twitter or Instagram handle MitchRapPod. And as always, let's do it together. Just let Mitch be Mitch.
Be Mitch.
Oh, damn.
There we go.
You're better than me. You shouldn't let me do that anymore.
No,
it's all
right.
you.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's all you.
Just a disclaimer, this podcast is not affiliated with Vince Flynn, Kyle Mills, or Simon & Schuster, but thank you to them for bringing us the wonderful world of rap. And the music soundtrack is Guerrilla Tactics by Raphael Crooks.